very much. Hello, welcome again to Rhythms of the Village. I'm Judy Tran. This is Onoche Chukura. And today we're going to talk about duple subdivision. So let's review our subdivisions, our different types of notes that label different types of beats. First we start with our single beat subdivision. This is called the quarter note. Okay, this type of note receives one beat. Now today we're going to focus on the eighth note, in which you need two of them to make one beat. So in other words, 1/8 note is worth half a beat. It looks like this. So like a quarter note with a flag. Most of the time you're going to see two or more eighth notes connected together, in which case they look like this. Connected on the top. Okay, and just to review some of the other note values that we've talked about in the past, we also have quadruplet subdivision, where you have 4 little notes that fit inside the single quarter note value. These are called 16th notes. One looks like that. It's like an eighth note with 2 flags. When you connect more of them together, they look like this. And most of the time you are going to see 4 of them in a group like this, as 4 together equal 1 beat. So 2 of these 16th notes equals 1/8 note. Another type of subdivision that we talked about, but we won't be focusing on today, is the triplet subdivision. It looks like this. Three eighth notes strung together with the number 3 either on the bottom or the top. This simply means that 3 eighth note values fit into 1 beat rather than 2. Okay, now I'm going to take a different color here and talk about the rhythm pattern we specifically have selected for today. So what you heard us playing earlier is called Lamban, and this particular rhythm pattern comes from Senegal, which is another country in West Africa, bordering Mali and Guinea. Or before I write this, why don't we just play the Lamban pattern again together so that you can hear it? What we opened with was actually a combination. I was playing the Lamban pattern, the basic one, and Onoche was playing for you some of the decorative patterns that go on top. And now we'll play the same pattern together. Ready? By the way, this particular pattern is usually used for sacred dances that talk about passages in life, passages through life and death and birth and renewal. There's also elements of harvest within it. It's usually a serious dance in nature in the Senegalese region. So this large drum, this beautiful large drum that you see here is called the junjun. Am I saying that right? As you remember, this is the djembe. It's more of a goblet-shaped instrument. And the junjun is sort of the largest bass drum that we have. And usually when you hear drum ensembles, this is the drum that's going to be playing the basic rhythm pattern that determines all the other patterns that surrounds it. So get used to really listening for the lowest drum. So this part sounds like this. I'm going to count with it. Now in the past, we counted in 4/4. So the meter has 4 beats per measure. This one I'm only going to count in 2, which I will explain why in a minute. Here we go. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. I I can also count the eighth notes. You can hear that there was one longer note and then two shorter note values in that pattern. The two shorter note values are eighth notes, like these. And they're usually counted with a number and then and. So I will count this as 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1. How we label that rhythm, or meter rather, is like so. I'm going to take the bottom line here. So in meters, the top number tells you how many beats are in the measure. And remember, the measure is one unit that repeats again and again. Okay, so 2 beats per measure. And then the bottom number, as you can see, is 4. That means that the quarter note receives 1 beat. And as you saw in our last tutorial, sometimes the eighth note receives 1 beat, in which case the 8 will go on the bottom. If you don't remember that, go and look back at our second tutorial. Okay, now you're probably wondering, why are we looking at a meter of 2/4 as opposed to 4/4? Well, it depends on where the emphasis of the beat is. So if you listen to me count, you're going to notice that the number 1 receives the most emphasis in my voice. So if I'm counting to 4, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that the first beat of each of those measures receives the most emphasis. So in the case of Lamban, there's really only 2 main beats, with the long note value as being the one with the emphasis. So here, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and. This really adds to the serious nature of this dance, because instead of having to wait for 4 beats before you hear another emphasis in the measure, you get an emphasis every 2 beats. So that means there's a certain amount of heaviness that you get to this rhythm pattern and to the dance that goes with it. So now let's go ahead and write down the Lamban rhythm pattern. So the long note value on beat 1 is a quarter note. And then the 2 shorter note values are eighth notes. And that's the end of the measure. Pretty simple looking, isn't it? Now, since this is so short, I'm going to write out several measures for you. So here's our first measure. And of course that will repeat. By the way to notate repeats in the music is to put 2 little dots at the end of the measure. Like so. So this just indicates that we have to go back to the beginning and repeat these measures over again. Like before, I'm also going to write out the beats for you. So here is 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and. So we're going to play this again for you, and we're going to count out loud together. Practice counting out loud with the beat. Here we go. Thank you very much. Thank you, and join us again for another tutorial. Bye-bye.